If you don't plan, you're stupid.
Hello and welcome back to If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid with Andy Rosenberg, a Florida estate planning attorney who helps families avoid probate, protect their assets, and plan with confidence. I'm John Clements, and if you've been married more than once or have kids from different relationships, today's episode is for you. Blended families require special planning, or someone you love might get accidentally disinherited. Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. But first, Andy, welcome back to the show, friend.
Hey, John. This is an interesting topic, my friend. This is a very touchy topic. How is that?
I can only imagine. So let's dig into it. Let's see how far we get. What exactly is it that makes estate planning more complicated when we're talking about a blended family?
Just the word blended. I mean, when we're talking, so it's funny because I use the term blended family. I think other people may use different terms, second marriage, third marriage, whatever it might be. And when I talk about blended marriages with people or workshops that I do, etc., I have to explain what a blended marriage is. They're like, "What are you talking about?" So why don't we do that first, John? What the hell is a blended marriage? Well, in my book, a blended marriage is basically when you got a marriage, right? And we got the wife that has kids from a prior marriage, and we got a husband who has kids from a prior marriage, and then they might have some kids together. So we have a blending of basically three families, or it could be husband, wife, depending on the state, etc. No bias by me, by the way, but that is what a blended family is. And it gets to be pretty complicated when we're dealing with this stuff, or it can be as simple as any regular family, depending on the situation and the family.
I see. And is that more a situation of just how well people get along together, or is it more about like whether kids are involved or not, or like what makes something more or less complicated in your experience?
I think what makes it more or less complicated is probably communication. And what I mean by that, John, is the current husband and wife. I'm just going to use husband and wife. It could be wife, husband, whatever it might be. The current husband and wife, how well have they communicated with each other? And what I mean by that, it's not communication, obviously daily communication, are you, what are you doing today? How's your work day? That kind of thing. I'm talking about, have you guys communicated with each other about what happens if one of us passes away, and where you want and how you want things to get distributed? And believe it or not, when I meet with clients for the first time and they're blended, I would say 80% of the people, it's like the first time they've talked about it. And so I'm witnessing in the conference room when I'm talking to them, the wheels turning in their head on each side saying, "Oh my God, I never thought about that." Or one of them blurts out an answer like, "This is what I want to happen." And then the other one says, "Well, hold on a second. I wasn't thinking like that." And then it gets to be a huge uproar, and it gets to be something that maybe is not fun to witness, or it can be fun to witness depending on what mood I'm in.
Pop some popcorn and sit back and enjoy the show, right?
Yeah. But it's such an important topic because people don't understand that not dealing with this is a disaster.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that because I would imagine, as it sounds like your experience confirms this, that most people would just say, well, we're just going to leave everything to each other, like done, right? But it sounds like that's the wrong answer. So what happens in those situations?
It's not the wrong answer. It might be the exact right answer. I mean, I literally just met with someone today. Okay, we were doing our design meeting. They're moving forward with my company, and now I have a design meeting, and it's a blended marriage. And it's he had, let me think, he had 3 kids from a prior relationship, and now they have 2 kids together. So that's a blended marriage in that situation, right? So we had that discussion that we're doing right now, John. We had the discussion about what are you going to do? What's going to happen? And so sometimes leaving everything to the survivor is okay, as long as they understand the situation. And what do they need to understand? Well, here's what you need to understand. So let's use this example that I had today, okay? Because I like examples. I think it's visually, it helps everybody anyways. So again, we got a husband, a wife. Husband has 3 adult kids, okay, from a prior relationship. The wife and the husband have 2 kids together, both under 18. So the question becomes, what happens if we determine that we want to give everything to the surviving spouse? So in that situation, when one spouse dies, the survivor has full control of all the assets moving forward. They can make changes to the estate plan. They could say, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm not going to follow the wishes of my deceased spouse. And in this situation, they have it set up currently where it's all going 100% to each other upon death. And then when they both pass away, it's going equally to all 5 children, 20% each. But let's just say that we did the same scenario and the husband passes away first, and that's the one that had the 3 children prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now the wife says, you know what? I'm pissed off with the 3 kids. I'm writing them out and I'm going to redo the documents. And I'm going to now say that everything goes to my 2 kids with my deceased husband, 50-50. And guess what? There's nothing that can be done. She has the full ability and rights to do that. So that's the negative scenario, or positive, depending on how you look at it, scenario of leaving everything to your surviving spouse if you're in a blended family situation. You better make sure you have full trust with your surviving spouse in that situation.
So that's a great example, and I'm glad you brought up the kids, because that was my next question: is how do you ensure that the kids are protected in these kinds of situations?
Or how I do it, let's put it that way, is in a blend. Let's go back to the first example I gave, which was husband, wife had kids from a prior, husband had kids from a prior, and then they have kids together, right? So three sets of kids basically. In that situation, what I would normally recommend, if they're concerned, is we do a her trust, a his trust, and a joint trust. So we do 3 trusts. I know it sounds complicated, it's not, but and what we do is we have her trust for her and her kids, and we make sure whatever assets we want to make sure that when she passes away, that her assets in that trust will go to her kids. And the same thing for the husband. When he passes away, whatever assets are in the husband's trust, it can be used for the wife's lifetime, but then when she passes away, it will definitely go down to his kids. And then the joint trust is exactly what it is. Obviously, they have a vested interest to make sure the kids get everything in that situation. How I plan things in Florida, when we have blended families in the right situation, we might have to do 3 trusts: a him, a her, and a joint.
Okay, and then so this is a new term, at least for this show, I believe, is trust. So obviously that's another legal term we hear all the time, see on TV and in the movies, but I want to know what it really is. So can you just give us the Reader's Digest version of what is a trust?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about in prior episodes probate court, right?
Yeah.
And we really want to avoid that mess. It's a disaster. So one of many ways to avoid that is to create a legal document called a trust. And I like to describe it to my clients and to workshop attendees, et cetera, in 2 steps. The first step is we have to sign it, we have to witness it, we have to notarize it. That is step 1. We have to create the thing. At that point, after step 1, think of the revocable trust as this empty box that I'm showing you, John, if you can see it in the camera,
Yep.
right? We have an empty box or an empty trash can or something like that. That's step 1. There's a second step. The second step, the legal term, is called funding or populating the trust. Fancy legal term for basically filling up the box with your assets. What happens is anything that is in this box when you pass away avoids probate court and acts like what you think of as a will and will just distribute how it needs to go. So in a nutshell, that is what a trust does. Does that make sense?
That does. And then is a trust something can you only access the funds in a trust upon the person's death, or is there other ways to access that money?
Let me ask you a further question. Who do you want to have access to that money? Are you talking about the husband and wife? Are you talking about the kids? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I guess we're talking about the kids still. Yeah, making sure those kids are taken care of.
So let's just use the husband and wife joint trust as an example. Remember, we got a his trust, a her
Yeah.
trust, and a joint trust. So let's do the joint trust, which is a husband and wife trust right here. And the person that created the document, the legal term for the person that created the document is called a grantor. That would be the husband and wife in this situation. Even though I drafted it legally, it's the husband and wife as grantor. They're the only ones that have access to the trust because they're also going to be the trustees of the trust, what's called the manager. Any assets that are in here, they're going to manage them as co-trustees. If something happens to one of them, then the other one would be the sole trustee. Here's where the kids could get involved. If something happens to both of them and they pass away, or maybe they become disabled, or maybe they just don't want to handle things anymore, and they name a successor trustee, the successor trustee might be their kid. So then the kid will slide up and will now be the successor trustee and will have access to use the money. But here's the kicker, John. The kicker is the money has to be used for the benefit of mom and dad while they're alive. You can't just give the money to yourself. That's a problem. That's going to be a violation of your fiduciary duty.
I see. So there's a bit of again, like I said in an earlier episode, guardrails around this process. It's not just like free money day.
You always mention the term guardrails,
Yeah.
John, which is great. I love that term. And almost everything we do, we're going to have, hopefully, if it's done right, there's guardrails on everything. Because you don't want to have carte blanche, have someone have carte blanche. It's a problem.
Yeah.
People do funny things with money. So we wanna make sure things are protected.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best things just in talking with you, it's just so clear to me that I need to call someone like you to make sure this is all done right, and don't do it on my own. Don't go to the internet website of whatever, legal.com, whatever. Like, go to a person.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, I see it. I see ads on TV. I see ads on the internet. All sorts of stuff. You can get these forms at Home Depot or whatever. There's all these places, Office Depot, all these places where you can go to get supposedly the forms. But I'm telling you right now, if you had cancer, you're not going to try and treat it yourself. You're going to go to a cancer specialist doctor, hopefully. Correct?
I would,
So
yes.
yeah. So if you're gonna if you're gonna sell your real estate property, you should hire a real estate attorney and make sure that they handle things correctly. So the same thing applies to your estate plan. If you're gonna have an estate plan done properly, you need to go to an estate planning attorney in your state that has good reviews and is competent and is trustworthy. Now, listen, John, there's always going to be good and bad attorneys, no matter how you look at it. There's good and bad doctors, good and bad everything out there. So how do you know who's good and who's not good? Referrals, obviously, are a way to go. One of the best ways to determine that is look at the Google reviews and see if they got good or bad reviews. That's usually one of the best ways to look for it. So, but yes, go to an estate attorney. Don't do this stuff on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you would agree with me if I say don't look at it as a cost, look at it as an investment.
Yes, I would 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
It is definitely an investment. And it's not an investment for you, John. It's an investment to the family. Because you're dead at that point when we're doing this stuff. So you could care less. But what we're really concerned about is making sure that the family gets everything smoothly.
Yeah, and I do want to ask about that. Is it actually possible to create a plan that is fair for everyone?
Absolutely 100%. I do it all the time. But again, we're going back to the beginning of the podcast here. If you remember what I said at the beginning, I said what makes things work? Communication. If the two people, the husband, wife, husband, whatever the scenario, if the two people communicate and can get on a level playing field where they all agree on how they want things done, it's our job to draft it. Okay? That's what we do. Now, here's a scenario though. What happens if they have pre and post nuptial agreements? Okay, that's important too. That has a lot to play into a blended family. So we have to, as the estate attorney, we need to know what's going on with the pre or post nuptial agreement in that situation, if you have one, and to see what it says, and to make sure that we're not doing something different than the actual pre or post nuptial agreement in the estate plan. So it's definitely more complex than a non-blended family, but we could definitely get it so that it's exactly how you want.
Awesome. And like you said, communication. I've never been in a situation where good communication made things worse, you know?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've been married. I just hit 32 years this past week. And I will tell you, if we get in a fight, it's because it's usually me and not communicating properly with my wife. So I don't care if you're a blended family or you're a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever you are, communication is the key to the success, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Thank you. 32
awesome.
years, somehow my wife has put up with me.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'm coming up on 20 and I can agree with you 100%. It's usually because I didn't communicate. That's the root cause.
Yeah, almost always, my friend.
Absolutely.
Or sports.
Well, yeah. So Andy, it's been great to talk with you today. Thank you for answering my questions and helping me and our listeners learn more about this really important topic.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, this is, guys out there, this is a really important topic. Make sure if you are in a blended relationship, take care of this. Don't let it sit and fester.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, just remember that blended families deserve more than hope. They need a plan. So visit rosenberglawfirm.net and let's make sure your intentions actually become reality.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.